Everybody, it's your man Anthony Brogdon, and I got a guy on the channel. He's a smooth dude, man. He's one of them Rangers, Smokey the Bear type guy. He one of them, but he's serious about his game. And I'm excited that he's come on here with me, with you, my viewers. I'm Anthony Brogdon, and I'm an ordinary guy trying to do something extraordinary through the people who come on the show. I tried to knock you out, and they the knocker outers. Watch this one. You're going to really like this one. It's a very interesting story. And hit the subscribe button on Strong Inspirations. It's free, my friends. It just let me know you like me. Hit the like button because there is no love button, but you're going to love this, my man. He going to tell it to you eloquently. Hit the notifications bell for when the videos come out. You get a ding, a shock, a smoke signal. A smoke signal, you know, I don't mean no harm in here in the park, but it ain't no fire or nothing like that. But nonetheless, something to let you know there is new content. And I'm releasing videos daily. I'm coming at you, boom, 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 boom. And then tell somebody about Strong Inspirations. Don't keep it to yourself. Let this flow. And like this one, tell people about what he has shared with us today. Now, you hear that I do public speaking. I'm on my way to Columbus, Ohio. I'm on my way to Florida. I got universities hitting me up. I got colleges and so on and so forth. And I tell it to them straight, no chaser. And I give it to them because of the research that I have done. I'm a historian now, my friends. I wrote this book. It's called Black Business Book. It's America's #1 Black business history book. Got to get you a copy of this, and is easily readable because I add no commentary. I just give you the facts. Very, oh man, this book is good. It's going to knock you out. Hey, check it out. I got another book coming out in about shortly. And, you know, after the next few weeks or something like that, it'll be there. It's titled That's My Land. It's about the history of Black towns and settlements, which is how I found this guy. Because his town, what he's going to talk about, will be featured in the book. I'm not giving you no hints. You will know soon enough. And so look for that. And all that where I'm speaking is on my website, businessintheblack.net, businessintheblack.net. Now you hear me use this term strong. It's my favorite word. In my world, strong stands for strength, tenacity, resilience, and a sense of oneness, nobility, and grace. And that is my introduction to the strong man on the channel. Come on, let's get it on. Introduce yourself.
I really appreciate this opportunity. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the work that you're doing. It's extremely important. This history is extremely important, and whenever I have the chance to talk about it, share my perspective on the research that I've been doing, welcome that opportunity. My name's Dorian. I am a historical interpreter with the California State Park System, and I'm broadcasting today from my office here at Colonel Allensworth State Historic Park. Very important, Freedmanstown. It's a black town here in the Central Valley of the great state of California, the southern end of the San Joaquin Valley.
And okay, hold on, stop there. We're going to get all into that now, but I got to let my guests get to know you just a tad. Well, where were you born and raised?
So I was born up in San Francisco, but I've spent more time in Southern California than Northern California. But of course, working for the state, they moved me around. I've moved around quite a bit. Actually, funny enough, the last state park that I worked at, Angel Island, was also related to the history here at Allensworth. Colonel Allensworth, leader of the Buffalo Soldiers, he was stationed on that island as well. So I've been talking about him, following his trail for quite some time.
All right, let me stop you there. Sure. Hold on, we're gonna get it, man. I know you're ready.
Oh so yeah, I appreciate it.
How did you come to like history like this and want to do what you do?
That's right. I've always been interested in history. You know, that was always probably my strongest subject in school. History and art, of course, kind of the middle ground between those two is art history. So that's what I studied over at UCLA. this particular strand of history that I'm following, the California Buffalo Soldier Trail, directly related to my own family history. My grandfather was in the Buffalo Soldiers. It's a very
Really?
last generation of the Buffalo Soldiers. Yeah, he was mixed race, African American, and he was in the army when it was still segregated. So that was part of his heritage. Harold
Really?
Yancey. He actually played football at UCLA, my alma mater, and that's one of the reasons I started researching this specific element of history was looking at
Okay,
different
let me stop you
sites.
there. Let me stop you there. Where in what city did you grow up? Was it San Francisco? You grew up
I
in
went
San
to
Francisco?
I went to part of elementary school and part of middle school in San Francisco, but we moved around the country and actually several other countries when I was a kid. My mom is a composer, a musical composer, as is my dad, and
Oh,
they traveled
really?
around for their education and various fellowships and things like that. So I lived in Europe for a little while. I was in Italy. Actually, the Buffalo Soldier history is kind of tied to the Italian campaign during World War II as well. So a
Really?
little bit aware of that. Miracle at St. Anne's. I don't know if you've seen
Okay.
that one. But
Now,
yeah,
now
uh,
you alluded to earlier that your father or something like that is African American.
my grandfather,
Your
yes.
grandfather.
Yeah, so my mom is a quarter African American. She actually
From
just happens.
where?
What's that?
Where is she from?
She was born in Los Angeles, but she's grown up in California. My grandfather is from Texarkana, so it's right on the border between Texas and Arkansas. Of
Yeah, yeah,
course, he
yeah,
died when I was a kid.
yeah.
Fortunately, I never got to know him well, but I remember
Okay.
well enough that he had a painting of a Buffalo Soldier in his house.
Hmm.
It always kind of stood out in my memory. It's kind of the iconic image of
Okay,
the
this is what I'm getting at though. I gotta be honest with you, if you don't mind.
sure.
You quarter African American. Does that go back to the South somewhere where they intermingle with Native Americans? Is that part of your heritage?
It's interesting. It's from that section of the country where you would imagine that would be so. And my mom always believed that. She'd always been told that by that side of the family. But when she did her ancestry, nothing came out that was related to the indigenous tribes of these
Oh,
continents here.
really?
So she thought she was part Seminole, Cherokee, all the tribes that were relocated to the Indian Nations, the Oklahoma Territory. But that didn't, as far as Ancestry.com was concerned.
It
So
didn't happen.
I haven't done it myself, but
Yeah.
she did hers, and she was kind of disappointed to find out that that wasn't the case
Where's the
because she
African
operated.
American at then?
What's that?
Where's the African American at in your family?
So that's my mother's father's side. So it's the
Oh,
Yancey family.
oh,
Actually, I've got
okay,
pictures of him in
okay,
his army
okay.
uniform from the 1950s. So that would have been the tail end of the Buffalo Soldier era, right before the army was integrated.
Oh,
So is that's kind of what led me into this specific community of historical reenactors and interpretation. So the
okay,
Buffalo Soldier histories. That's kind of what got me into the Park Service in the first place. Was
okay. I got to stop you there. We're gonna get there. I
oh no,
hope you
I
don't
apologize. I
mind.
don't
But
want
let
to
me
get
say
ahead of
this:
myself here.
knowing
Had a
that's a
coffee
part
here.
of your heritage, does that make you more? Did that make you open to want to study Black history as you do?
Well, I've always been interested in it, but yeah, once I got to UCLA, I kind of started looking into more of my grandfather's background. And there's this
Really?
fantastic museum in Los Angeles at Griffith Park called it's called the Autry Museum, or I guess they've changed it, the Autry Center of the American West, and they have a lot of artifacts that are related to the Buffalo Soldiers and a bunch of Western style artwork. I'm an artist myself, so I do a lot
Okay,
of
okay,
I do a
okay,
lot of stuff along those lines, studying what we call the Great American Western. So a lot
okay,
of the films that came out. I was at UCLA Film School and in the
okay,
history department, so I was looking at representations of specifically black soldiers in the Western frontier during that
okay.
time period, which is
All right. Let me ask
underrepresented
you
history.
this. Let me ask you this. So, with that background, did you grow up around Black kids?
Yeah, absolutely. I did very much so, especially up in the San Francisco Bay Area. But when I moved down to Southern California, it wasn't as much the case. I was in Orange
Yeah,
County, Huntington Beach. Uh,
yeah.
First state parks that I worked at were basically coastal parks, the Orange Coast District, sometimes the
Okay,
northern side of San
okay,
Diego County. But
okay,
but yeah, I mean, I've traveled around the state quite a bit.
okay,
But yeah, absolutely.
okay.
Um,
Let me ask you this. So we gonna divert from that to the story. What are Buffalo Soldiers? Let's start there. Who no one knows what that it means.
Sure, absolutely. So it's the true origins of the Buffalo Soldiers go back to the Civil War. Allen Allensworth had been a leader of the Buffalo Soldiers, been all African American Army regiments that were formed in the immediate aftermath of the American Civil War. Most of them had been veterans of the Civil War.
So this is
Allen Allensworth,
1865.
yeah. So
Okay.
the regiments were officially formed, at least the beginnings of it go to 1866. But yeah, it really kind of stems out of the American Civil War. So it's the 1862 Militia Act and then the Emancipation Proclamation allow many African Americans to join the Union military, which is mostly comprised of state militias, at least as far as the Army is concerned. But then they are allowed because of how valiantly the United States Colored Troops, USCT, served during the American Civil War. Six, and then later four infantry units were merged into two, became known as the Buffalo Soldiers. So you have the 24th and 25th Infantry Regiments, and then you have the 9th and 10th Cavalry Regiments. Um, and it's a fascinating and far reaching history. It goes all throughout the American West. That's where they won the name Buffalo Soldier. There's a kind of mythology around that name, but eventually it becomes kind of a global trail because many of them were sent overseas. Some of them were sent Spanish-American War. They'd been in Cuba. They'd been in the Philippines, as was Allensworth himself. Um, some of them were sent to China during the Boxer Rebellion. Didn't see a lot of combat there, but it's kind of a global trail. Some of them were sent overseas during World War I and World War II, at least during those general eras. You have the Mexican Punitive Campaign Expedition in 1916. Then you also have various campaigns in World War II, including the Italian campaign. Um, so it's very interesting history in the sense that it spans across continents. But
Yeah.
the main focus of my research here has been their contributions to the state of California and the infrastructure here,
Let me
especially the
stop
work
you
they
there.
did in
Let me
national
stop you there.
parks.
So what are you just saying they're infantry of black soldiers? And that Buffalo was just the title of it. It was the brand of
Infantry and cavalry. The
it.
cavalry is
Okay.
probably the more famous image of
What
the
is
Buffalo
cavalry?
Soldier. Cavalry are the mounted soldiers that are on horseback. So the term
Oh,
cavalry
okay.
apparently dates back to the medieval term chivalry. The
Okay.
knights in shining armor riding on horseback. There was kind of this romance to the notion. So eventually the term cavalry starts coming into play. But in the American West, they were given the name Buffalo Soldier by various indigenous tribes that eventually they found themselves in conflict against. It's a complicated history for sure. They fought against
Yeah.
some Native American tribes, but protected other Native American tribes. I want to emphasize that.
Now, were
Especially,
they able to when they first got into the service, the black soldiers? Did they give them guns?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a Civil War. They were infantry regiments. Uh, they would have had the same Springfield rifles, eventually Spencer carbines, the pistols. They had
Really?
artillery regiments. Allensworth himself served in the Union Navy. He was a steward, but these were river gunboats that were operating all throughout the what would have been called the river campaigns during the American
Yeah.
Civil War. Very important theater of operations. Actually, I have an illustration. One of the river gunboats that Allen Allensworth worked on here, USS Pittsburgh. I don't know whether
Yeah.
you can see that, but
Yeah, I see it very well.
yeah, just
Very
trying to show the
well.
types of
Yeah.
speaking of guns, the kind of things that they would have had here. That's one
And
of the things
that's
I got in my office.
1800s. That's 1865,
Exactly,
you
yeah.
said.
1862, 1863. So Allens were served in the Union Navy and then later would be part of the Freedmen's Bureau, which is run by the Union Army. So he was a teacher and an agent for the Bureau. Of course, that's not really, yeah, I mean, it's under the auspices of the Department of War, but he works as a teacher, as an educator. And that would
Okay.
be his role inside of the Army. Uh,
They give these guys these guns. Are there battles specifically that they fought in that they won or lost that most people might or should know of?
Absolutely. Actually, there's the charge on Fort Wagner is very historically, it was depicted in a very historically accurate fashion in the film Glory. I don't know if you've seen that one with
Yeah, yeah.
Morgan Freeman and Denzel Washington. That's about the 54th Massachusetts Volunteer Infantry. And although they wouldn't have been called Buffalo Soldiers at that point, those are really kind of the forefathers of the Buffalo Soldiers. They're laying the groundwork for the regiments that would eventually be known as Buffalo Soldiers. And eventually the term Buffalo Soldier, it was given to them apparently by the Cheyenne Dog Warriors, famous Native American frontier
Yeah.
or Plains warriors. They compared their fighting spirit to that of the wild buffalo,
Right.
and
Yeah, I've
it
heard
was
that.
a name of great honor. That once they
Yeah.
found out that's what they were being called by the Native Americans, they took the name with such honor that's how you start seeing the name Buffalo Soldier being written about in correspondence, later
What
newspapers.
in that battle that you spoke of, where was it? And give it, as you may know, what happened? Like how many people did they kill? How many enslaved people did they free? Any of that kind of information?
So the charge on Fort Wagner was it was almost considered a suicide mission, and it was a very valiant charge. They weren't able to. I mean, I think they had 50% casualty rate on the initial charge. Their commanding officer actually died on the front lines. Colonel Shaw. He's played by Matthew Broderick in the film. It's on the Carolina coast, and it was one of the main important artillery positions for the Confederacy during that specific stage in the war. I haven't been out there myself. I'd love to visit
Yeah.
it, but here in California, we've got an artillery fortress that's actually very similar to that. Fort Point, where
Oh.
incidentally, there's a permanent Buffalo Soldier exhibition. Presidio,
Oh.
San
Okay.
Francisco. That's where this project's really headquartered from.
Okay.
But for
Okay.
me, all trails lead back to San Francisco, back to my hometown.
All right.
On my
Yeah.
birth.
Now, we on our way to San Francisco with this discussion. So
Yeah, there are
they fight in
40,000.
the war in the South, and then they migrate all the way to California. Do you think? And like Allensworth is one of them that fought in the South. How did they get to California? Do they horse and buggy, trail of tears, any of that? How did they get there?
Sure, it would have been a long journey, a long trail.
It
And
was.
Allensworth himself didn't get out here to California until 1900, so that's several decades after the Civil War is
Right.
concluded. But yeah, they operated as a security police force for the construction of the Transcontinental Railroad. Cavalry is obviously riding on horseback. They're building up a lot of forts throughout the western frontier, forts that later become significant towns throughout the West. Allensworth is he's basically he operates as the chaplain, which is a combination between being a religious leader at that time and also an educator. During that specific time period, he's charged by the Army with the assignment of developing school programs to give the soldiers basic education. First generation of Buffalo soldiers, many of whom had come out of slavery, hadn't been given any kind of education whatsoever. But Allensworth had education as this top priority for the advancement of his people. So that's the work he was doing with the Freedmen's Bureau under the Union Army. He continued that in the this is a religious minister, as Baptist minister, and then later with the Buffalo Soldiers when he serves as chaplain. So the infantry marches on foot a lot of the time. The infantry is considered foot soldiers, but it's like his trains begin to develop as which they assist in. There's numerous methods of transportation. Actually, it's a very famous bicycle experiment where some of the 25th Infantry is riding. They're riding on bicycles to test that as a kind of a feasibility study to see if troops can be transported in that kind of a fashion. So this
Really?
group rode 1897. They rode from Fort Missoula in Montana all the way to St. Louis, Missouri. It's an epic ride. 20 African American Buffalo soldiers and you got one or two white officers rode along with them and a journalist. But it is actually much fanfare, and they were put through the worst or broadest variety of climates and different
Yeah,
types of
sure.
terrain to make this expedition. But it
Yeah,
stretches
sure.
all through the national parks. They did a lot of work for the National Park Service, and that's one of the things I emphasize in my programs here. The California Buffalo Soldier Trail is all the different. They built a lot of infrastructure. They built a lot of the roads. They put up a lot of the telegraph lines, building up the country as we know it, building up the West as the United States expands westward. And Allensworth was part of that, and
Okay,
as were many.
we're gonna get to the Allensworth guy, but at some point from the onset of when they fought in the Civil War, what's the numbers of individuals are in this Buffalo Soldiers brand? How many would you say they might people?
Well, the numbers vary over the course of time. During the Civil War itself, there were around 200,000 African American soldiers and sailors that served in the Union Army and the Union Navy.
Really?
But after the Civil War, most of the armies disbanded. But four all African American Army regiments were formed. Well, actually, as I said before, it was originally six. There were four infantry regiments, but eventually that was folded into two. So you have between 5 and 20,000 African American troops on the western frontier. They're mostly operating through the west. Of course, yeah. There's Buffalo Soldier forts all throughout the southwestern states, in particular. Texas State Parks actually has a pretty good Buffalo Soldier living history program.
Yeah,
Because you got
yeah,
Fort Concho,
yeah.
and what's Fort Huachuca, you got through Arizona, New Mexico, you got a bunch of examples of Buffalo Soldier forts. So they built up a lot of the infrastructure that would be the hubs out of which many of the towns and settlements would eventually would be put up throughout the western frontier. But
What
gradually,
is
over the
the
course of time, there were more than six regiments. I'm sorry.
yeah, what when these Buffalo Soldiers are operating, do they have to have a white officer as the captain of each of these groups or something like that? And how high could a Buffalo Soldier go in rank?
Generally speaking, it was usually a white officer, but there were several examples of black officers among the Buffalo Soldiers. Allen Allensworth being one of them.
Okay,
In his time, he was the highest ranking of all the African American men under in the U.S. Army. So he reached the rank of lieutenant colonel at the time of his retirement, which would have been in 1906. But during his time, there were several other black officers in the U.S. Army. Charles Young, he was actually the first black superintendent of a national park, and he's been posthumously promoted to brigadier general. But at the time of his retirement, he was a full colonel, so he was actually higher ranked than Allensworth by the time he retired. But
okay,
he's one of the first black graduates from West Point, famous military academy back east in
yeah,
New York.
sure,
Uh,
sure,
but yeah, it was mostly white officers,
yeah,
some of whom were hard on the soldiers. There was a lot of race prejudice. I mean, obviously, during that time, and carrying on forward. But some of the white officers were very sympathetic and very supportive of the soldiers under their command. Colonel Ben
oh,
Grierson, I believe
okay,
he was, I think he was brigadier general by the time of his retirement. Colonel Hatch, he was the commander of the Ninth Cavalry. So he
yeah,
advocated for his soldiers, and the Buffalo Soldiers won more medals of honor than any other regiments in fighting in the West, and the lowest
oh, really,
desertion rates of any Army regiments serving in the West.
oh,
It was a
really,
peacetime army, is what it was considered. In a lot of cases, they were the only semblance of law and order in the Western frontier. Is known, fighting against some Native American tribes, yes, but also protecting others. I have examples of them protecting the Cherokee in Oklahoma from incursions from the Texas Rangers and state militias that were intruding on their territory. I have examples of them protecting the Utes in Utah, which is actually where Allensworth had been there too. Fort Douglas built a school there. It's still in operation today. Apparently, I haven't been out that part
hmm
of the country. Excuse me.
hmm yeah.
But yeah, it's a long, far-reaching history. But
Okay. Let me ask you this. So now, just a few more questions, then we're going to focus on Allensworth and go back to his beginning, let's say.
sure.
One of the questions is when the Buffalo Soldiers did what they did they do it with white troops also? Like say, let's say they built in a fort. Was it just them doing it, or and having this white officer as their leader, or they all? I guess what I'm getting at is there a segregation within the army of saying you all got to do this and y'all sleep over there and you drink water that way? You follow what I'm asking?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of segregation. I mean, that's kind of the entire
Yeah.
concept behind the Buffalo Soldiers in many respects. But yeah, oftentimes they were billeted or stationed garrison right next to white soldiers. Actually, one of the sites here in California, the Presidio Monterey, you have the 9th Cavalry, and I forget the white infantry regiment that was with them. But I was just out there just a couple weeks ago, and they seem to have competitions against each other. I don't know, more or less amicably. I haven't heard
Yeah.
of any like major incidents where fights broke out between the different groups. any major
Yeah.
like large scale incidents. Matter of
Yeah.
fact, there were several episodes where black soldiers rescued white soldiers that were about to be wiped out. Um, Happened over at the very unfortunate Wounded Knee incident.
Who was wiping them out? The Native Americans?
Yeah, exactly. So it was the Seventh
Okay.
Cavalry was about to get knocked out again over at Pine Ridge, and that was right at the end of the 19th century, and it wound
Okay.
up being the Buffalo Soldiers that rode in to save them.
Oh, really?
It
Okay.
was yeah. So I mean, there are incidents like that to be
Okay.
sure, and they
Yeah.
fought side by side under many different circumstances. But yeah, they were definitely. And another interesting point about the Seventh Cavalry is that General or Colonel Custer had been he had been a general during the Civil War, but they demoted him after the war was concluded. He had been offered command of the Buffalo Soldiers, the Ninth Cavalry, but he considered it beneath his dignity. So he turned it
Mm.
down, and then later the Seventh Cavalry under his command, at least the ones that were directly following him, ended up getting wiped out over at Little Bighorn,
Oh,
which is
really?
yeah, 1876, one of the
Okay.
biggest
Let me ask you
military
this:
disasters.
when we talk about wiped out, this is what I know. The Indians were over in Oklahoma. They got their Trail of Tears, and then they end up asking them or telling them, "Y'all got to leave again, Oklahoma, and go to Texas." Is that correct?
Well, I believe the tribes that were relocated to Oklahoma, and there were a number of them. They were most of them stayed there, I believe. Of course, the Buffalo Soldiers wound up in Texas. That's kind of what the whole story behind Juneteenth was. The General Gordon Granger
Right.
orders United States colored troops to basically spread the word that the Emancipation Proclamation is now the law of the land. The tribes that were located in Oklahoma, many of them actually fought on the side of the Confederacy during the Civil War. So it was kind of an awkward
Oh,
position some of the Buffalo
really?
Soldiers were put into because they were sent up there. And a lot of them, just because of the color of their uniform, were not warmly received. And actually, there were several thousand African Americans that were still being held in slavery up in the Oklahoma Territory during that time by various Native American tribes, the Choctaw and the Cherokee in particular. Actually, the last Confederate general to surrender, Lone Wadey, was a Cherokee chief, which is pretty interesting. So
Huh.
the story of Juneteenth, the emancipation of the African American slaves that were still being held in the Western territories, the westernmost extremities of the Confederate rebellion, were in that section of the country. And but despite that, many of the Buffalo Soldiers themselves wound up settling in the Oklahoma Territory. Some of them taking Native American wives, and eventually making a home there. A lot of the Buffalo Soldiers who originally come from the American South didn't want to go back to the South where they'd be facing, the Jim Crow laws and
Yeah, sure.
very, very repressive state regulations and extrajudicial militias, Confederate forces that refused to surrender and basically were continuing the war in their own way. So that's what leads many of the black soldiers to, remain in the West. And that's kind of part of the psychology, I think, behind why this township here was formed, even. But it's
Okay.
but yeah, you'll see a
Let's,
lot of black townships along the railroad lines, like Nicodemus in
yes, yes.
Kansas. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of
Yeah.
it's tied back to the Buffalo Soldier heritage. Black
Okay,
soldiers
let
of the
me
West.
ask you this then. So now, let's go to this guy Allensworth that you spoke about so often. Where was he born and raised, and how did he become who he from his early days as you know it, up through what is his career path?
Sure, Allen Allensworth was born in 1842 in Louisville, Kentucky, and he was born into slavery. It's Kentucky is one of those states. It's what they call a border state.
Yeah.
It's loyal to the Union, but it's still a slave state. And Allensworth, he had long sought some form of an education. It was completely unlawful at that time for anybody being held under slavery to get any sort of an education. But he'd managed to teach himself how to read and write through friendships that he'd made, various games that he played at the time. But he was when his masters found out about this, he was punished for this. He was sold downriver, separated from his family. He attempted to escape from slavery a number of times, but he wouldn't be successful in his attempt to escape from slavery until the outbreak of the Civil War. Um, Happened to be a section of the Union Army was coming through the town in which he'd been held as a. I think he was back in Kentucky by that point. He'd been forced to work as a racehorse jockey, for an earlier iteration of the Kentucky Derby. Uh, he'd befriended some of the Union soldiers that had been camped outside the town, and he devised a plan to escape from slavery. So basically, as the soldiers were parading through the town the next day, he'd managed to disguise himself as one of the soldiers and basically marches right past his former masters who don't notice him in formation, enters into the Union Army, joins as a civilian, volunteer for the hospital corps. Then he joins into the Union Navy, which allows for African American enlistment before the Union Army does. So
Hmm.
yeah, he begins his military service right around that time, and he serves in the Great River campaigns during the American Civil War. Since he has the ability to read and write, this proves a very valuable skill. He's basically the right hand man of the captain on a number of river gunboats. I believe USS Pittsburgh, USS Queen City, USS Cincinnati, and he serves with distinction. He basically yeah, I mean, he's very proud of his military service. In the years following the American Civil War, he remains very active inside of Civil War veterans associations, including here in California. It's called the Grand Army of the Republic. And when you see pictures, if you look up Allensworth, you'll always see pictures of him wearing his Grand Army of the Republic medal. And he did. Actually, I was just reading about an incident. He come out here, city of Los Angeles, where he actually owned a home after he retired from the army. Every year, he would do his recitation of the Gettysburg Address, Abraham Lincoln.
Hmm.
So he was
But
very
but but
involved in that
he
community.
was also a minister, didn't you? Was he a minister or
Absolutely.
something like that? Yeah, right.
Yeah, yeah. So that's one of the things you'll see in looking at the Freedmen's Bureau is that you have a lot of the missionary services are very involved with the educational aspects of the Freedmen's Bureau. They
Yeah.
established the first public education system in the American South, and Allen's was part of that. He goes back to Kentucky, Department of Kentucky, works for various schools that are operated by the Freedmen's Bureau.
Yeah. Okay.
So he's a bureau man. I mean, it's a challenging assignment, but probably the most successful aspect of their mission is the educational system that they set up,
Okay.
the educational
How does
program.
he get to California?
So it's after a long journey. He doesn't wind up in California until 1900, and that's after he's been through all these states in the West. He'd been in Fort Supply, Oklahoma. Actually, have an illustration of that if you'd want to see it. Do a lot of architectural and historical illustration, but been to Fort Supply in Oklahoma. This is the first fort he'd be sent to in the West. I mean, Fort
Okay.
Bayard in New Mexico. Later, it'd be
Okay.
Fort Harrison in Montana. But during the Spanish American War and the aftermath of the Spanish American War, he's sent to the Philippines. And his assignment with the army is basically as a chaplain. So it's that is a minister. He's a religious leader, theologian. He'd done a lot of traveling. He was a traveling orator, speaking about his vision for the future of his people, which largely is based around education, broadening the horizons of knowledge and understanding. And he had the ambition of eventually setting up a, a black college here at Allensworth, but that wouldn't come until later. His assignment within the army is to basically provide a general basic education for the soldiers. And he's so successful in this that he's made superintendent of army schools in some of the southwestern territories. Even at the last state park that I worked at Angel Island, which he eventually winds up there after the Philippine insurrection. He gets injured, I guess, getting off of a carriage. Um, he's sent to the Presidio San Francisco to recover from his wounds, and that'd be the first time that I've seen recorded that he was here in California. So he was at
Does
Angel
does he
Island.
does he does he get into combat other than on that naval ship where I mean his religious reasons said I can't shoot a gun at people? Is that something or that's not the case?
He's more of an administrator. He's an
Okay.
officer. So yeah, during the Civil War, a lot of the officers were at the front lines, but military tactics evolve over the course of time because of how heavy the casualties are during the American Civil War. Bloodiest war in American history. And yeah, as I mentioned before, the officer for the 54th Massachusetts, he was on the front line. He died
Right.
during that charge. Allensworth was more in the he's more on the administrational level. They made him
Okay.
superintendent of schools.
Okay.
He was the librarian for a lot of the
Oh,
forts.
I got
He
you. I
was in
got you.
charge of the mail service. Actually, Buffalo Soldiers play a very important part as acting as security for the transit of the mail line, the postal service as it's being developed in the U.S. is expanding westward.
Right.
So
I got you.
it's very very broad reaching history. It's kind of a combination between military and civil service because
I got you.
it's a blurry line in those time in that particular time period because
I got you.
before yeah, and as I
So,
said, they worked as park rangers out here. Some of Allensworth's men had served as some of the first park rangers in Yosemite, but this is before the national or state park system is even bureaucratically organized as an agency. So the
I
Department
got
of the
you.
Interior asked the Army to basically serve as park police, wildland firefighters, and construction crews, building up a lot of the trails and
So,
roads.
so he gets to California, and I'm sure this is like later in the day in his life, maybe. That's a question.
He's
And
getting
then
up there
now
in
he
years.
he founds this town that we talk about. Tell us about how he did that and where it's located. Give us that kind of story.
So Allensworth, the township of Allensworth, is located in the Central Valley. So it's about halfway in between the greater Los Angeles area and the San Francisco Bay Area. It's one of the reasons they chose the location of the town because many of the original colonists that set up this town had come from either one of those geographic areas. He wanted an area that was isolated enough that he could run his own educational program. So this was an experiment for him. But it was also kind of the way it was marketed, because they did have a pamphlet newsletter here in the town called the Sentiment Maker. It was marketed to a lot of the soldiers that were from those African American Army regiments, Buffalo Soldiers, as a place where they could enjoy retirement. They could set up their own businesses and such. But really, the chief cornerstone of his vision was the educational program of the colony. She establishes the Allensworth School District in 1912. So a lot of people come out here so their children could get a first class education and they could learn about their own African American history, which wasn't something that you would normally expect to see in a lot of the public schools here in California at that time. Um, but he starts the main investors for this program or this project, I should say, were in Los Angeles. Allensworth had a home in L.A. and he had a group of interested investors who wanted to see this project succeed. They Not all of them lived out here at Allensworth because this was kind of this was pioneering. If you come out to this part of the state, you'll see that it's definitely very remote. Um, you don't have a lot of the amenities that you would kind of get used to in
How,
living
how far is it from Los Angeles?
so it's so we're about, I guess it depends. It's without traffic, you can drive down there in about 3 hours, and it's
Okay, so
about maybe
3 hours.
4 hours up. But it is strategically located on the railroad line. So they started the town right along the north south Santa Fe Railroad line, which gave relatively easy access to both metropolitan areas.
How
Uh,
far is it from San Francisco?
it's about 4 hours,
Okay,
I would say. Yeah, so
okay,
it's kind of
okay.
halfway in between.
Halfway.
I've got a map drawn up here
Yeah,
with
yeah,
the
yeah.
Buffalo Soldier Trail, which shows where Allensworth is located here in California. It's kind of like right smack dab in the middle, in between.
Put your finger to where it is. I see that cross. So
Oh yeah, right
yeah.
here. It's just right above
Oh,
the
okay,
cross.
okay. I see it. I see it. Okay.
Yeah. So
All right.
LA would be actually not far from where this cross is here. But
Okay.
yeah, San
Okay.
Francisco Bay Area, Presidio, San Francisco. There's
I
a lot
got
of the Buffalo Soldiers who founded this colony are buried up at the National Cemetery at the Presidio, San Francisco. Um,
you. I got you. Did he have to buy the land, or did he homestead it, or how did he get the land initially?
yeah, there's a bunch of the investors put up the original funds to start. They call it the California Colony and Home Promoting Association. So they reached an agreement with what the Pacific Farming Company, I believe, was the name of the original realtor, and they had a lot of different um, colony projects in this general area. Um, I'm
How
not
many
sure that
acres
it
is
went
it?
insolvent, but sorry, what's that?
How many acres is it?
The park is about 240 acres, but the park only comprises a small portion of what the town had been.
Oh,
Um,
so it's many more than that the town.
yeah, so there's still a town here at Allensworth. It's adjacent to the park, but the demographics have changed. What had been an all black town is now predominantly Hispanic. I'd say a little over 95%. There are
Oh,
still some African American families that live out here, but the original township would have stretched beyond where the barriers of the state park is. And the state park just basically encompasses what the historical core of the town would have been, the part of the town that was closest to the railroad line. So that's where most of the important businesses were, and many of the prominent families of the colony had lived, including Allensworth himself. He had probably the nicest house in the historic district here.
what was the population at its height?
So I've seen numbers up to 500. I believe the 1920 census put the population at around 300, but it always waxed and waned. People left. There's a lot of people that would. There are various events that happened out here that drought circumstances and other employment opportunities that came up in different parts of the state, but inspired a lot of people to relocate. But then some people came back. Um, right now, I'd say the population of the town is probably somewhere around 500.
Oh, okay.
But yeah,
Did
again, the
what's the main street? Was there a main street that had all the businesses and it did it what is it more of a resort town or was it and people live year round or just
there were a lot of people that were here year round. Some people would leave in the summertime because the summers out here can get pretty repressively hot. So I have
oh
seen examples of people saying, oh, they'd go down to Pasadena or Altadena during the summertime to escape the heats out here. Um, and again, a lot of people came here so that their kids could get an education as well. So if the school
yeah,
wasn't being
yeah,
held in the summertime, they didn't have
yeah.
any reason to stay here during the hottest months. We could be looking at 110, 115-degree weather out here in July and August. So
Really?
it's kind
What
of
what's the landscape? Is it on the ocean front? Is it hilly?
the Central Valley, this section of the valley. It's a pretty interesting ecological history in and of itself. But you come out here, you see basically uniformly flat land. It's farmland for as far as you can see.
Okay.
And this area, a lot of people look at it like it's a desert. It's like, oh, why are these agriculture going on here in the desert? But it's really a floodplain. This area had all been underneath a massive lake, actually the biggest lake in the West, Tulare Lake, which is a remnant of a much more ancient inland sea, which covered the entirety of the Central Valley, going back to ancient times, last ice age, Lake Corcoran. But that lake, the Lake Tulare, was drained for agricultural purposes at the end of the 19th century, or mid to the end of the 19th century. So 150 years ago, the township of Allensworth and all the surrounding towns wouldn't have been possible because it all would have been underneath water. And interestingly enough, when I took this assignment over here at Allensworth, this is the spring of 2023, that lake was reemerging. They call it the Phantom Lake. It comes back every generation or so. After years
Oh,
of drought, if there's a heavy rain or heavy snow melt, all the water collects in this basin. And there was remarkable, like I'd never seen anything like it. Every other time I'd been out here to Allensworth, it had been drought conditions. The landscape was brown and this kind of a golden brown, very dusty. But then at that specific time, the lake was threatening the town. Luckily, it didn't. The flooding didn't get into the park or the town, but some of the surrounding towns were totally flooded out.
really?
Corcoran, yeah, well, parts of Corcoran, parts of Alpaw, which is just north of Allensworth Pond, which is just south of here. So yeah, it's the Phantom Lake. It's pretty interesting. I didn't even know about that aspect of it, but the
Yeah, yeah.
hydrology of the region is fascinating. But yeah, that's obviously an ongoing issue. But without human intervention, I think the lake would return in some form. Um, that's pretty important part of the history too. Um, but yeah, it certainly has its challenges. It's a harsh landscape
Okay.
in the summertime in particular, but in the wintertime you have other challenges. You get this heavy fog called the Thule fog. And I'm from San Francisco Bay Area, so we have heavy fog up there too. Up on Angel
Yeah,
Island, you'd hear the foghorns all night, kind of
yeah.
lull you to sleep in a way because the fog's so thick that ships can't see each other. But I'd say
Right.
the fog's thicker out here. It's a strange phenomenon. I don't really understand the science behind it. More of a historian,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it makes
yeah.
it difficult to drive out here sometimes just
Oh,
because of
really?
how thick the fog
Just a
is.
couple more questions. Did with him being the kind of guy, other than education, did he have like specific rules for his residents? where like it was no drinking or no partying. I don't know why the question came to me, but did he have some of those kind of things?
Sure, yeah, it was a dry town. He had his he had the virtues of the town. Were yeah, it was actually a pretty big part of his speaking tour. He had you know, it was a military kind of an organizational structure they had for the town, especially in the early years when the early colonists were here. They referred to themselves by their military rank, and he expected a level of discipline. This the school was very serious, man. You know, yeah, he was and there were differences of opinion, uh, you know, as far as his. I mean, of course, you know, I think because I was reading that behind the barber shop, the Frank Milner barber shop, they did have kind of like a club sort of a situation, like a cigar lounge in the back and a pool hall. So they might have had a stillery or something like that eventually, but that wasn't. A lot of people, if you come to the town, it looks like an old Western town. A lot of people are, oh, where's the saloon? I said, well, we don't have that in this town. It's
Oh,
this was a dry town, and it was a very temperance was extremely important. That was something that was you know, a lot of the people that followed Allensworth were following these you know,
oh,
strict rules. You know,
yeah, yeah, sure.
and
Just
you see
just a
pictures.
just a couple more. Did um um what does the town look like today? I mean, you alluded to it just a second, and the park is where you work.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
and the
my
park,
office is basically I'm kind of like right in between the park is to the north and the town, like
yes,
right at the edge of town here. So if you go into the
yes.
town, it's interesting. It's definitely what I would call, you know, more of an economically depressed area. Tulare County's either the poorest or one of the poorest counties in the state of California. Tulare County is where Allensworth is located. It's very agricultural. It's very rural. So if you go into the
Oh,
town of Allensworth, which is an unincorporated community, you'll see a lot of farm animals. You'll see a lot of chickens running around, wild or not wild turkeys, but you know, turkeys, domesticated
really?
animals. You'll see a lot of horses and cattle. Um, you'll see a lot of dogs running around.
Is
Um,
there a remembrance or a reunion of the descendants of the like they how a lot of towns do that, they come back for a holiday, and for viewers who are watching this, to say if you really wanted to come and see the town, this might be a better time to do it. Is there something like that?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, actually, just yeah, it's interesting you asked that because last week, or I guess it was the weekend before, we had our October rededication, October 11th, and there were many descendants there. The Colonel's great granddaughter, Anita Zachary, was here. His great nephew, Charles Allensworth, who's a very renowned actor. Um, he was here as well. They were both speaking about the legacy of Alan Allensworth, and we've had many of the descendants gather, and I've met a lot of them at the October rededication specifically. But we have other events here. Juneteenth. Actually, I think this is one of the main parts of one of the primary places in the state of California where the holiday of Juneteenth was observed before it became a national holiday. Now every city seems to have
Yeah, yeah,
something
yeah,
along
yeah,
those lines, but it's very much connected to the legacies of both the free. It was a Freedmen's Bureau holiday, and
yeah.
it's very much connected to the legacy of the Buffalo Soldiers, and they took that celebration very seriously here at Allensworth. So those are the two largest events, but we also have
Okay,
a Black History Month event, which is a larger event that's always the second Saturday of the month in February, and they also have
okay.
Founders Day event. I'm trying to get more of a living history
Yeah,
program
yeah,
so
yeah,
we could
yeah.
have a congregation point for all the various Buffalo Soldier reenactment groups and historical associations. Have some
I,
kind of an encampment or something like that.
I gotta ask you this if you don't mind. Just two or more.
Okay.
On a personal note, was he ever married and did he have kids?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So Allensworth's wife, Josephine, she was also a leader of the colony here. She was a huge advocate for education. She was a music teacher here at the colony, and they had two daughters, Ava and
Okay.
Nella. But neither one of them lived here at the colony because by the time that they started this colony, Allensworth was up. He was up there in the years. He was in his late 60s when they started the colony here.
Oh, okay,
And
okay.
both of his daughters had already started families, and they lived back in Los Angeles, where their main home was.
Oh, I got you.
But
And
and
I
that's
gotta ask this one. Did he face any controversy?
absolutely, yeah. So there's no question about that. There were differences of opinion about the different schools of thought as to the you know the future of the African American community here in California. He did get some pushback because his main goal here at Allensworth at the colony was building an institution that would have been akin to the Tuskegee Institute back east in Alabama. He did have correspondence with Booker T. Washington about setting up a black college here, a technical school where African Americans could learn agriculture, advanced farming, horticulture, gardening, um, uh, city planning, water management, civil engineering. But there were differences of opinion. A lot of the political leadership in the African American community at that time was pushing for integration as quickly as possible,
Right.
demanding integration, and they viewed Allensworth's vision as being a little more conservative than their specific point of view.
Okay.
But Allensworth, he faced a lot of discrimination inside of the Army itself. He felt often
Okay.
isolated from the other officers inside of the Army. He did have his allies. He was a very
Yeah.
skilled political tactician. He had
Okay.
allies on both sides of the aisle. Matter of
Okay.
fact, the local legislators, they supported his idea for there being a black college here at Allensworth. They liked the idea of the state sending in funds to help develop this area. But the people that supported him were white segregationists. So they didn't have any problem with his specific institution, but they were the ones that sponsored, the resolutions that eventually would be defeated in the state assembly here in California to have the
Okay.
technical college built here. But yeah, there was a number of yes, it's definitely certain
And
controversies.
and
Uh,
and the town, did it ever face any racist acts like massacres or shootings, lynchings, or anything like that?
No, nothing that I've seen. And Buffalo Soldiers were here. They were well renowned as
Yeah, yeah, they
pretty
ain't coming through
elite
there
fighting troops. Exactly. And it would have been difficult to come out like if it's. I mean, don't get me wrong. There were hostile elements within the county up in
Yeah.
Visalia and Exeter. There were chapters of the Ku Klux Klan that were up there, but they knew
Oh,
better than to get into an altercation against the Buffalo Soldiers, who had their own self-defense unit, because they saw what was happening in other black towns around the country, and
I
they
got you.
had their
I got you.
weapons. They had as I said, it was a military structure to this operation, and they took
Okay.
self-defense very seriously. They
Okay.
handled
I
their
got you.
own enforcement. They had their own. Mr. Dotson was the constable of the town under the Justice of the Peace, Oscar O'Vare, who was also in the Buffalo Soldiers. So they maintained law and order. They took that very seriously, and the
I
need
got you.
for outside intervention from the county authorities who were involved over here. And they were involved, like they had a baseball team here. They played against other towns, surrounding towns that would
I
have been
got you.
at that
I
time
got
would
you.
have
I
been
love
white
it.
towns.
Yeah.
Their glee club, their choir went during World War One. They traveled to the county seat in Visalia and
Yes.
were rallying, for war bonds and such during World War One.
Yes.
So they definitely were active in the, despite the fact this is an isolated area, like, and it
Yeah,
still
yeah, I
is.
got
Like,
you. I
if
got
you come to
one
this
more.
area, like
What's the oldest building that still stands?
the main, I'd say the heart of the community is the school. So that goes back to 1912. Most of the buildings here are reconstructions, but the schoolhouse, which was in operation till 1972,
Yeah.
that building stands exactly as it appears, and not a lot of work has been done to, uh, it didn't need a lot of restoration work in order for it
I
to
got you.
maintain its. Got a drawing of that here somewhere. Oh, dang it.
Okay.
Actually, you can see it here in my portrait of Colonel Allensworth. It's
Oh,
just
okay.
directly behind him, the school. I got a better one. I just
Yeah,
can't.
that's good. We see it. Yeah, that's
Oh, no,
good.
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I
that's
do a
good.
lot of architectural illustrate. That's one of the things I do for the state is recording historic buildings. So that that's one of the things. A lot of our historical districts are mostly comprised of reconstructed buildings. A lot of the buildings that were still standing here when the state park started buying up land in this area in the late 60s and early 70s. A lot of them had been abandoned for extended period of time and needed a lot of restoration work. But we've restored. There's what we call, I think, somewhere in 22 historic structures. Most of them are reconstructions, but there are 5 original buildings. So you've got the schoolhouse, the Smith House, which is standing exactly as it did back in 1910 when it was put up, the Heinzman House, the Carter House, and then Colonel Allensworth's house itself, which is considered 60% original building pieces, but needed a lot of restoration work when
I
the
got you.
historical
Did
district
he
was
die a
established.
wealthy man?
He did. He was a pretty well-to-do individual. Um,
Okay.
he had a number of different business investments, and also his officer's pension as a lieutenant colonel was, California is really expensive to live now, but back
Yeah,
in those days it was wasn't as unaffordable as it was. So having an officer's pension back then, which his wife, after he passed away,
right,
um, she was able to get his army pension, and they had a
right.
much larger house in Los Angeles, which I could put my hand on my other architectural sketchbook. I could, or maybe I left it over in the
Okay.
hotel.
All right.
I could send it to you if you'd
Yeah,
like.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
That's
did
fine.
drawings of his house in Los Angeles, which actually, funny enough, there's kind of a mystery behind that building. For a long time, we operated under the assumption that that building had been demolished in the 1960s, had been sold and demolished, but we actually found some documents that suggest that the building was moved to a different location on the other
Oh,
side of the street. Might still be intact and operational as a fraternity house today, which is kind of
oh,
fun because
okay,
he lived over by USC in downtown LA.
okay.
But
All
yeah,
right.
just I want to get down there to see it for myself because I compare the drawings, photographs that we have to the building as it's standing now. They might have changed it a little bit, but I would
Yeah.
like to see some kind of historical marker there if it is in
Well,
fact the same
yeah,
building.
the right house. Yeah. Well, hey, thank you so very much for coming on the show. Now, I always do this with everybody. Is there a question or something that I have not asked you that you want to share with us?
Well,
Anything come to mind offhand or what have you?
again, I just want to say I really appreciate this opportunity to be able to speak with you.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
really admire your work, but the main emphasis of my research here at Allensworth, what brought me over here is the California Buffalo Soldier Trail. Uh, just want to show this map again. That's
Yeah.
the main thing that I've been working on, and I try to advocate for this every chance that I get because they played a very significant role in the development of the park system, right? We're park rangers or state parks employees. I'm a historical interpreter, and the fact that Allensworth is really the only place inside of the state park system where this history is being discussed, I think is I think that more work needs to be done. The Presidio
Okay.
Monterey, Presidio San Francisco, Yosemite, and Sequoia National Parks, and Campo, California, which is the last of the Buffalo Soldier forts in the West. That goes back to World War II. So that fort wasn't the Buffalo Soldiers weren't decommissioned out of there until 1944. So there is an effort towards making that into either a state or county park, but that's down in San Diego, right? San Diego County, right along the Mexican border. But this is important history, and I really want to extend my gratitude, in particular, to the various Buffalo Soldier reenactment groups that have kind of kept this legacy alive through living history presentations of various sorts, kind of
Love it.
bringing this to the forefront because Hollywood didn't really do justice to the fact, especially when the westerns were coming out. There was very little mention of the Buffalo Soldiers. I mean,
That's
there were a
right.
few films. Sergeant Rutledge, Danny Glover was in an HBO film regarding the Buffalo Soldiers, but he played a Buffalo Soldier. We actually have a
Yeah.
film here in the state park that we show called Allensworth: A Piece of the World, which is narrated
Yes.
by Danny Glover and has interviews with a lot of the descendants of the original pioneers
I
that started
love it.
the
I
Allensworth
love it.
project. But
Well,
it's
hey, thank you so very much for coming on the show, everybody. I told you you're gonna like it, and he eloquent too. He know it so well. He just like boom, 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 and I thought that was really good.
I
Man,
appreciate that. I've
this
been talking
this
about
has
this for a
really
long
become
time.
your passion,
No,
and
I
you
really
got to
appreciate
be
that.
the foremost expert on this.
I've had the opportunity of studying under a lot of some of the top experts, Brian Shellum, Anthony Powell. I've met him on numerous occasions, looked at his collection. He's the top collector of Buffalo Soldier uniforms and artifacts. And our paths have crossed. And I got to say, I'm very grateful to Allensworth for allowing me this opportunity to continue my research in this field. But it's something that's very personal to me, and it's something that I advocate for any chance that I get because it's part of how this country was formed. I mean, American history is nothing if not complex, but it's definitely a story that I think hasn't been given its fair due. And
Yes.
I'll do whatever I can to,
Yeah, that's
spread.
good. I like that.
No,
I like that.
I gotta say, I really admire your work.
Yeah, I like that,
I can't
man.
wait for
That's
the
a
book to
beautiful
come out.
thing.
I
Yeah. I'm
wanna
gonna
get a
come
copy.
out there one of them festivals.
Ah, we'd love to see it. Just let us
Yeah,
know.
yeah, I'll be in touch. So everybody hit the subscribe button on Strong Inspirations. It's free. Hit the like button on this because there is no love button. You learned a lot throughout many years too, as he told all of the story eloquently. Hit the notifications bell. Tell somebody about Strong Inspirations. go to my website, businessintheblack.net. Let me include this. How do people find out about the park? What's the website and the hours? And let's
Uh,
promote that right now.
well, our visitor center is open 7 days a week. It's 10 to 4, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. The visitor center is open. The park's open. We've got a campground that's open 7 days a week as well. So if you wanted to come out here, I, it's the only state park campground in Tulare County. There is a Cal Fire, which is the California's fire department, forestry department. They've got a campground up in the mountains, in actually incidentally in Sequoia National Forest. It's where
Mm,
buffalo soldiers have been. But sorry about that. But you look up her website on California State Parks. Colonel Allensworth has, and if you call ahead, we can organize a guided tour for you. During the
okay.
school year, I do distance learning broadcasts about the California Buffalo Soldier Trail and the architectural history, just architectural drawing class for the K through 12 students. So
Okay.
I got two distance learning broadcasts that I do from Allensworth here. But we got a number of different programs. You can see that all on California State Parks website.
All
Um,
right. There you go. We're gonna put all that in the description. I say to you, my friend, I want you to do this, and I honestly mean this. I want you to stay strong, stay safe, stay on your grind, keep doing this. I'm sure that there's probably just a tad bit more you want to learn. Uh,
oh yeah.
and I guess this is another question. Have you discovered anything that no one else knew? Like like in the grass or something like that, that you found something when you were walking there that said, my God, look at this. This might be a medal that he had or somebody had. Had any of that ever since you've been there?
Not me personally, but what's interesting about this district is that all my bosses here are archaeologists. So that's the kind of field that they work in. They do the excavations and things of that
Yeah, yeah,
nature.
yeah,
Actually,
yeah.
my boss, the cultural resources manager of this area, Steve Tomey, he found some artifacts that were from the area, not anything of a military nature, but things that were of significance to actually Alice Royal, who'd been the she wrote Allensworth the Freedom Colony, which is one of the one of the a very good resource
Okay,
on the history
okay,
of Allensworth, and
okay,
and breaks things out. I got it over here actually. Definitely recommend this book, which you can order online. You can find
okay.
it.
Oh,
Allensworth,
there
the
you
Freedom
go.
Colony.
All right, we're
Um,
gonna put all that in the description.
yeah, and
Okay,
yeah, so he
okay,
actually found, I believe, like a necklace or a medallion that was of significance to the family, and he was
okay.
part of the excavation. But yeah, that's always been an area that's interested me is archaeology. I've taken one class in that, but that isn't my primary field of study or my job.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
I do
So,
want to
so
spread out into that. That's something I want to learn is the cultural. That's the next thing. As you mentioned before, I welcome to any opportunity to expand my knowledge and learn.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
There you
the
go.
thing I really want to find out right now is uh, the fate of the Allensworth House in Los Angeles. So I'm going to go
Yeah,
down.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
actually driving
yeah,
down south on Tuesday, and I'm going to
yeah.
be stopping over in LA to see if I
Trying to look
can
at it.
compare my drawings and photographs that we have to see if
Yeah,
that house is in fact the Allensworth home out there. So that's something.
yeah. All
Don't want to
right.
get ahead of myself, but that's
Hey, man, thank you so very much.
no, I
Stay
really appreciate
strong,
us
stay
talking.
safe, stay on your grind. We're gonna put all that in the description. I'll stay in touch. Thank you so very much for coming on the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for this opportunity.
All
Have
right,
a good one.
bye bye.
Bye.